tattoo day's done, I open a beer. I pop a beer. My day's over. Because I don't tattoo and drink at the same time. As soon as I pop a beer, doesn't matter who comes in, I'm done.
I used to get woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning by my neighbor. He had a pre-unit Bonneville with a chrome frame. He would crank that thing up at 4 a.m. and ride to work. Every morning I'd get up and look at him out the window. Think, you bastard. For more reasons than one. My name is David Gregory. I'm the current editor of the Backstreet Choppers magazine. My brother's friend had a couple of motorcycles. He had an old Enfield 250 Continental GT that he was rebuilding forever. I didn't think it was ever going to get done. But when it did start up the first time and he rode it around, I was very impressed because the sound of those old British singles, that was very inspiring at the time. First bike was a 1968 Suzuki T200 two-stroke twin.
And that was back in England?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I bought it off the same guy that rebuilt the Royal Enfield. Now, in the UK at the time, if you had the dreaded L plate, you know, the big white card with the big red L, then you could ride up to a 250 without having to pass the test. So, I had several small capacity bikes before I was able to pass the test. You know, the test was a big deal back there. You get really nervous about it, and the guys administering the test would leap out from between parked cars to test your braking ability. It was a lot of fun. And as soon as I passed my test, I ran out and bought a brand new Honda 900 in 1981. That was the biggest and fastest thing I could find. I went through 3 bikes after that one, and
wait. What happened to the 3 bikes?
Okay, the 900 I almost killed myself on twice in a row. I ended up going sideways at 135 miles an hour, and I thought, you know, this isn't going to work. Just self-preservation. So I ran off and traded it for a BMW 900, and it was the most boring bike I've ever had in my life. It was very staid. I mean, it was pretty reliable, except when it was raining, because then if you hit the front brake, nothing would happen. It had like a drilled disc that didn't like the rain at all. So then I traded that in for a Triumph T160 Trident, the electric start version, and then my entire life changed from that point. I never went back to generic Japanese bikes.
I'm an antique tattoo collector. There's just a handful in the United States that are really serious vintage collectors. I don't know if it'd be worth anything, but I think there'll always be a young kid comes out of the woodwork, has to strip down a Harley or something. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know, fads go in cycles, you know, bell bottoms, pig pants, you know, it all just goes back around. 20 years from now, it'll all be choppers again, but I said my buddy Jeff, he stays busy building them. So there's still a market. I guess there's a market for anything. You know, like if you're in New York, you can specialize in one type tattooing. You'll have enough customers, you know, bigger cities. But, you know, Jeff's, I think, just went to Daytona, you know, so you have to find your target group. You know, and he's real good at it. So there'll always be somebody getting something, you know, a bike or a tattoo, or I don't think it'll ever stop. It'll slow down. I think tattooing right now, you're going to see the decline. Too many shops. You can only slice a pie so many ways. But we're here to stay, you know. I mean, I own the building. I'm never going anywhere, so.
Englishman's a great man. He's been really good to me, great to work with. We work together. I do some photography for Englishman. I've seen some beautiful bikes. Great person, great for the industry, does a really good job. Good friend.
The old Iron Horse, which is, you know, back in the late 90s, was completely different to the version that came out in the last millennia. it was a really good magazine. We used to follow it. You become obsessed with it almost. And I would send in letters and, for pictures for the letters section. And occasionally they would get published, and that was a really cool thing. And then suddenly the entire editorial staff was fired. And they hired a bunch of people that, in my opinion, really didn't know what they were doing. I mean, they knew the business, they knew how to put a magazine together, but they did not know the core readership to that magazine. And they were putting in stuff like this. There was this fish bike, which was a Triumph, which had all kinds of molded fish all over it. It was god-awful. And what they did was the guy that owns the magazine now, Hammer, he contacted them and told them they were screwing up. And basically they told him, if you can do any better, come over here and do it. Which he did. Well, actually, he went and told them he could, but he moved the operation to Michigan so he wouldn't have to go to live in New York. So that came about. And about 5 issues later, I can't remember exactly, the publishing company, Princeton Publishing, went belly up anyway. So it all came to a halt at that point. But Ralph Hammer had already had like one magazine in the can, so to speak, which would have been the next Iron Horse. So what he did was start a new magazine called The Horse to continue on. In fact, you can see it behind you there. The premiere issue is actually number 163, 165. That was supposed to be a continuation because the last Iron Horse was number 164. So we would try to get a continuity, but of course they abandoned that because the next one was number 2. And now we're up to number 157, so eventually we're going to come around to 165 again, so I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. Tommy Granger is a bad motherfucker.
Let's talk about your best Mr. J's night.
Best Mr. J's night.
Oh boy.
I mean, they were all great. So many good nights there. It's hard to.
Right.
Shit. Let me see the best Mr. J's night.
Talking about riding your bike in there.
Riding the bike in there. That was cool. Riding the bike through the place.
Right.
I remember like when it used to close at 3 o'clock. We'd get beer. We'd go down to the north end of Asbury, on the beach. We'd stay there and party till like it got light out.
Right.
And I remember this one guy. He was a pretty heavy dude, real heavy. And we're all down the beach. All of a sudden, he took off his clothes. We're running in the water. Everybody started throwing rocks at him and shit. He's like, and he wouldn't come out of the water because everybody didn't want him to get out. Everybody's throwing rocks at him and shit. Like, dude, put some fucking clothes on. And he wasn't, didn't have the physique that should be running around naked,
Englishman. He's actually a really, really cool guy. Just takes forever to figure out his sense of humor. And then to find out it's really not that good after you figure it out. But he's a great guy. He's a stand-up guy. If nothing else, you can always rely on Englishman to be Englishman. Dave's one of my favorite people.
That was Ralph's idea. He decided we should all have a big gathering somewhere, because you get chummy online with a lot of the readers, and everybody seemed to be for it, to have a gathering. The only reason it was called the Smokeout was because it was going to be in the Smoky Mountains. So he came up with, let's do the Smoky Mountain Smokeout. So we descended on the Days Inn in Pigeon Forge. That was the scene of the first one. And maybe 20, 25 people showed up for that, including a couple of people on totally inappropriate bikes. But hey, it was a fun kind of thing, and we decided to try it again the next year. But the next year we tried it at a actual event place. You know, it was a Cherokee reservation, and that didn't go so well, and we were cordially disinvited for ever coming back to that place. But then we let Edge take over, you know, Flat Black Incorporated, FBI. And he's done a great job since. You know, he moved it to Salisbury, and it just really took off from there. We get handwritten letters from our readers who are complete Luddites. They don't even own a computer. And, you know, they'll ask questions and stuff, you know, they'll like request we actually write them back, which is a kind of a weird concept. But on the other hand, there's so much information out there now that there never was before. And several of these, when we first started, a lot of websites sprung up because they hated us. They were the hate hammer websites. There was a boatload of them, and they would get on there and bash us continuously because they hated what we were doing, which was funny at the time. Because, you know, I'm not sure what because we weren't part of the cool kid thing at the time. And that's very cyclic too, because for quite a while, about this period, we were pretty cool. And then we get to the latest ones here, and all of a sudden we're not quite so cool anymore, because, you know, you become the establishment, you become the target. When we were just the upstart, we were doing things differently from the way it had always been done, because we were doing it our way now and not the old way. They hated that, and they let us know.
First tattoo I did, the guys that were apprenticing me said, hey, bring down a dumb friend, you know, you're ready to tattoo. I said, all right. So my buddy Charlie Barnes, who passed away, he had a little hand-poked Indian on his arm, and he wanted to cover it up with a heart and all his kids' names. So we sat down, I did the heart, the kids' names, and in the end, you could still see the tattoo underneath it. I never covered it up, it looked horrible, and he always rubbed it in my face. That he would show up in my tattoo shop and show everybody my first tattoo and embarrass me. Charlie Barnes.
We went from the fat tires to the big front wheels, which isn't really choppers, but, you know, that's where a lot of the money's been going lately, to those humongous front wheels. And then I see a lot of the chopper builders trying it with 2 large wagon wheels on a chopper, which seems totally impractical to me. A lot of the newer chopper builders seem to be going towards the impractical, you know, like a gas tank that'll maybe make it to the corner before you run out, and all kinds of strange death machine parts. And to me, a chopper has to be functional. It has to be able to go from here to California if you want. It may not be the most comfortable or practical way of going, but me and Hammer jumped on our rigids, shovelheads, Death Valley, and from there we rode straight to New Orleans, then to the smokeout. I mean, it could be done. You don't have to be an old man with a gold wing to go across country.
Fucking baloney story.
What's the baloney story?
Oh, fuck you, man. I hate that. I've told that story. All right.
You don't want to tell, you know.
I'm gonna tell it. That was my bitching leading up to it. I'm trying to act, motherfucker. Okay, but I'm doing it quick because I'm really fed up with it. I had Orange County Choppers sign a 3-pound baloney. I just rode up to their shop, and I was doing illustrations for the horse at the time. Not many of them. They weren't very good either. But then I went up there and I had them sign it just because I was having a bad day, and they lived next town over, and they were opening a new thing, and they signed it, and then I wrote an article on it and sent it to the horse, which is where I work now, and they said, you're on staff. And I was like, what do you mean on staff? And they said, well, you got a deadline and we don't pay you this shit. And it's been going like that for about 13 years now.
Pete, go back to LA.